Now, it's time for Modern Money Doughnuts with Stephen Hale and Gabrielle Bond.
Welcome to another edition of Modern Money Doughnuts. I'm Stephen Hale. I'm an adjunct associate professor at Torrens University here in Australia.
And I'm Gabrielle Bond. I am an activist and an organiser with the Sustainable Prosperity Action Group, and I'm also a director of Modern Money Lab, where I work with Stephen. And we have a guest with us today, Dr. Kate Wylie, my good friend. Thanks for coming on with us, Kate. It's really great to see you. We're going to be talking to Kate about climate medicine, and we've had a few chats with activists recently, which I really love doing because it's very close to my heart. And Kate, you're a GP and a climate activist.
That's right, Gabby. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Gabby. Thanks so much for having me along for your show, Modern Money Doughnuts. Yeah, basically, I'm a GP. I work in a small group practice in rural Adelaide, which is on Kaurna land. And basically, I spend all my spare time volunteering for climate and health. I'm on the board of Doctors for the Environment Australia. I chair the RACGP's Climate and Environmental Medicine Specific Interest Group, which is a bit of a mouthful to say. And I've written a website called Climate Medicine, where I try to approach climate change as a health issue.
Yes, it's a beautiful website, Kate. I'd urge everybody to have a look at it. You need to go to climatemedicine.net, all one word, and we'll show in a second, we'll get some slides up and we'll show what the website looks like. It looks like it's absolutely beautiful. And the words on the website really mean a lot to me. Climate is a health issue. We can treat it. Our planet is worth saving, and so are we. And I think that's just beautiful and perfect, Kate. And so I think let's have a look at it now. There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
Illustration. Yeah. So that's not the live website. That's just an image from the front page. Yeah. So Kate, you've prepared these beautiful slides for us today. So I think we should. I'll just start the slideshow, and you can talk to the slides as we go, if that's okay.
Sure. All right. So if we just start with an acknowledgement of country. So just to acknowledge that the nation called Australia is stolen land. First Nations people have never ceded their sovereignty of their land, and respect is owed to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island nations and First Nations people. As we said, we're on Kaurna land. Hello to a group of people in Ghana is Namani. So Namani to all the people listening to this podcast today. And, really thanks for taking the time to be here. If we just go on to the next slide. Mm-hmm. Really, what I like to focus on with climate medicine is the concept that climate change is a health emergency. We look at climate as an economic problem, which it is. We look at it as a political problem, which it is. But, climate is a health problem. And I think when we start looking at climate with that lens, it really personalises it. And it also invites the concept of treating it. We treat medical problems. So let's treat climate.
And people might have seen an article in The Guardian recently which outlined that public support for treating climate as a health issue, there's more public support than if you just kind of stick to the economic side of it, which, I guess our show is definitely about economics first and foremost, but this is such an important lens to look at the climate emergency through. Should we go on?
Yeah, sure. Let's go on. So obviously this is a pretty big and wordy slide, and, we don't have to go through every little word on there because it's probably a bit boring, but the fundamental reason why this slide is there is just to show how broad the health effects of climate change are. So, climate change pretty much affects our health in a myriad of ways. It affects all organ systems. No human on this planet is going to escape the health effects of climate change. As our planet gets hotter, we're going to feel them more and more and more. And, we're seeing them now. And, I certainly see the effects in my own practice now in, suburban Adelaide. Yes. And, I think that's echoed with health practitioners around the world.
Wouldn't want to be in India right now. very
No.
scary and threatening what's happening.
Is that a massive heat wave?
Yes.
Yeah, and as somebody said online, this is probably the coolest, well, in the Northern Hemisphere, what's coming up is probably the coolest summer that people are going to see in the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Well, this
we're
is
only
it.
going in one direction, aren't we, at the moment?
Yeah, and it's just disaster, isn't it? And when we look at, you know, we know what the IPCC is telling us, you know, unequivocal, you know, scientific speak for dead set sure. You know, they're also saying we need to, you know, peak emissions this next 3 years if we're going to have any chance of limiting to 1.5. And I think the thing to bring home is, you know, we're at 1.2 now.
Yeah.
And this is what we're getting. And 1.5 is a whole heap worse than 1.2. And, you know, you look at the heat waves in India, heat waves all around the world, you know, heat waves are a killer. People die in heat waves.
Yeah.
People die from heat stroke. People die from heart attacks. People die from kidney disease. And, you know, it's pretty intimidating, right?
Yeah. I love that you talk about what we can do. So, and there's a lot of information in your slides about that. Let's just go on to the next one.
Okay, so just a little shout out that I really like dogs, and so if I can get a dog slide in, I'll just, you know, and who doesn't like dolphins, right? But yeah, like, I'm very focused on solutions. I'm very about treating climate change, and you know, like obviously we need political action, we need policy, you know, all across the globe, and we need corporate responsibility, you know, and you know, we need big businesses, we need corporates to, you know, pay attention, do the right thing, but you know, I don't have a lot of control over that. You know, I'm not Prime Minister and I don't own a coal mine, but what I can do is what I can do. And I think all of us have the capacity to work as individuals, like, and be responsible for their own world. And, you know, the more of us that do things that are, you know, things that help our planet's health rather than hinder it, the better off we're going to be, and the more we create the kind of narrative shift that we need around climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember from when I worked for Get Up for a while, we used to talk about three sort of broad areas of activism. So there is kind of on the individual level, making people's lives better. Things like you know, mental health support, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, anti-poverty measures, those sorts of things. And then there's creating new and better ways to do things. So, like, for example, electric bicycles and cycling infrastructure and bee hotels and those sort of things. And then there and another sort of really big area is the activists that work on changing dominant institutions. And I think that is renowned to be the most difficult and impenetrable one. But when you do make change in that area of activism, which is what we're trying to do, that's when the biggest changes happen. But the three of them have to work together. Yeah, the three of these broad areas, and I think that's pretty much what your lovely slide.
That's what I'm all about, Gab. Absolutely, you know, and hoping that when, you know, people do individually do things that are empowering or that are, you know, climate positive, it makes you feel better, because, you know, one of the big obvious impacts of the climate crisis is how scary it is and how bad it is for our mental health. And I'm sure that there's people listening who are pretty overwhelmed by the climate crisis, pretty, you know, feeling a lot of anxiety and grief. And what I find personally works is being active and finding the things that I can do to make a positive difference. So there's 10 of them. We could go through them if you like.
Yes, please.
All right. Oh, yeah. So just to say that everybody can do something.
Yeah.
We can all be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think as the individual, you can go, well, I'm just one little person. You know, what does what I do really matter? But let's remember, Greta Thunberg is one person. She's had a massive impact on our planet.
Yeah.
You know, okay. So number one is to learn for your climate. So really it's just a matter of looking it up. I've listed some websites there. Doctors for the Environment is a great place to look for information on climate and health. My website's pretty good too, I'd have to say. NASA is fabulous. Like, NASA's got great information. The Climate Council in Australia, the Planetary Health Alliance, lots of good information there. And if you use the Ecosia search engine while you're searching, you get to who plant trees with their profits.
Yes, shout out to Ecosia, absolutely.
Yeah, well, win-win, right? So the first thing everybody can do is basically look it up.
Yeah.
All right. The second
change your default search engine while you're there.
Yeah, absolutely, Gabby. Yeah.
To just dip into Australian politics for a moment, perhaps Adam Bant, who was asked about some economic statistics, said Google it. He should have said Ecosia.
He should have, yes.
He should have. It might not have had the cut through, but he should have. I'm sure he uses Ecosia, really.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that we can all do is talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, I think climate change is the elephant in the room. Like, most people are worried about it. When you look at, surveys, we know that, like this one on the slide from Climate of the Nation 2020 from the Australian Institute, 80% of Australians think we're already experiencing the impacts of climate change. Like, everybody knows it's there. We just don't talk about it. And so we need to, like, let's not be shy. Everybody's worried about it. And so lots of people are worried about initiating the conversation. But if we don't talk about it, nothing's going to change. And we need change. So talking about it, I think, is the thing. Like,
even if it's uncomfortable, which I've noticed.
And maybe just acknowledging that it's uncomfortable, and being. I think one of the very powerful things that especially young people can do is, talk to their parents and grandparents about their level of distress. I find that young people are often very aware of climate. And, by talking to their older family members about it, who care about and love them, it can really help kind of switch people on. Yeah. That's my tip.
Good tip. Thank you.
All right.
We've talked about this on the show before. We've sort of talked a little bit about it with Dr. Sherry Wise, who's a special expert in agriculture and climate change in the US. And we sort of skirted around the issue about eating meat and eating what kind of meat. But I think perhaps bigger changes are in order.
I think it's important, though, when we are thinking about our own personal actions, that and in this respect, I've changed some of my I've made different choices in recent times. But it is very important, not while you make your own changes and explain them, not to start blaming other people who might be at a different stage in the journey, because apart from anything else, it's counterproductive. It just makes people more defensive and less likely to think through these issues.
Having said that, there's heaps of good to eat less meat.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's important to talk about that. Sometimes people can be a little bit overly aggressive when talking to others, and I don't think that helps.
I think that's a fair point, Stephen. Like, and you don't want to put people offside, and you certainly don't want to browbeat people. And the plate on the slide is from the Eat Lancet diet, which is also called the Planetary Health Diet, and that is a plant-rich diet. It is not a plant-only diet. And that diet was formulated for us to be able to feed our current global population with our current agricultural land. But basically shifting, a lot of it, we do need to eat a whole heap more veggies. We do, but we don't have to be sort of completely militant about it. One of the things that we can also do as far as diet is concerned is not waste our food. Like food waste is a massive problem. And, food waste is a great big source of methane. And certainly in the US and in Australia, we waste a whole heap of food. And, just eating what's in your fridge is like a really simple climate action that you can take. And, like buying organic food, that means you're reducing the nitrogen and phosphorus runoff that's used in fertilizers, and I don't know if you've gone into that, but that is a massive global problem. But I do want to say, when it comes to food, by far the most harmful food for greenhouse gas emissions is beef. And that line across the top on the graph, and I wouldn't expect that anyone can really read the fine print, but what it basically measures is greenhouse gas emissions per kilo of food product. And line across the top is beef at 60 kilos of CO2 per kilo of beef. And when you go down the bottom, the ones down the bottom are fruit. So, absolutely nasty to people, but we can also encourage them to make the choices.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a vegetarian. I don't eat beef anymore. I don't eat lamb anymore. I do eat cheese. I certainly eat chocolate. I drink coffee. I don't eat pig meat, but that's actually partly because I'm convinced that pigs are an unusually intelligent creature. But I do eat poultry. So I'm far from a vegetarian. But I have changed my diet, and I have to say, vegetarians wouldn't like me for saying this. It's not because of a concern for the well-being of cows. That's not why I've changed my diet. It's entirely, in my case, because of the climate effect.
Yeah, it's because of the emissions.
It is.
Yeah, and and I've been on a similar journey, Steve. Like, I used to be paleo. I ate a whole heap of animal, and now I really hardly ever really stop the red meat. I do have a little bit of cheese, and a bit of milk in my tea in the morning. But, and I've stopped eating seafood after watching, I forgot the name of the movie about
My Octopus Teacher.
No, not that one. The one where they show the global fishing trade and how...
Seaspiracy.
Seaspiracy.
Yeah. So we're not it's not all or nothing, and we can all make a bit of a difference just by making relatively small changes.
Yeah, and the next time you're at the pub, don't get the surf and turf, get the veggie burger. You'll have a beer and chips with it.
Halloumi burger.
All right, let's go on to the next slide.
Let's go on. Yeah.
So this is
water, especially in Australia. Yes.
Yeah, well, especially for us in Adelaide. We're in the driest state on the driest continent. Our water supply comes from the Murray River and rainfall. Both of them are threatened by climate. So we really need to be water wise. And if a person owns their own home, they can, have a bit of agency with garden design and water tanks. And, a lot of this really is the purview of the town planners, to have water sensitive town planning. But I think the simplest, most important thing that every individual can do is not to buy bottled water.
Yeah.
When you're buying bottled water, you're just buying plastic, right?
Just stop.
There are large parts of the US now that have been in drought for years.
Yeah.
As well. I mean, this applies to because of course there's basically the same amount of rain is happening all over the world as has happened in previous generations, but it's falling in different places now because of climate change and much more in the sea than on land and different parts of
northern New South Wales.
Or it's falling in torrents and causing extreme floods, whereas in other places there's not been significant rain for years.
We just, the whole weather cycles are completely up the whoopsie, aren't they? Poor meteorologists, they really got a hard time. But you look at the equatorial belt and just the massive storms around there, and then if you're north or south of it, it's dry. Okay. Getting a garden is number 5, really.
If you're lucky to have enough to have a garden.
Yes, that's true. If you're unlucky enough to not have a garden, you can get involved in tree planting schemes in your local community, and there's a whole heap of them out there. And it's a pretty fun way to spend a Saturday. Get out of the city, go and plant some trees, hang out with some cool people. But I think even if you've got if you live in an apartment, you can grow your own herbs. You can grow sprouts and lettuce and things like that. So salad, you can do that. Or, you can, if you can afford it, you can buy some carbon offsets, and they're basically tree planting schemes. And so power for your climate is basically about who you buy your energy from. So this, for me, like this list, I have to say, I wrote this list about 3 years ago and have started working through them. And Power for Your Climate was one of the first things I did, because I just switched my bill. I switched my electricity from, a company that buys their electricity from coal to one that buys their electricity from renewables. Easy. It's really easy. I think homeowners, yes, they can get panels and batteries. You can turn off the gas. Gas releases a whole heap of fugitive methane. Gas is CO2. And can I just say, as far as the health effect of having a gas stove, even when, like, gas stoves are associated with respiratory conditions, asthma in children particularly, and even when it's off. Yeah. So even when your stove is off, it's leaking gas. Yeah. And, if you've got little kids with asthma in your house, think about that. It's going to impact on how well they can breathe. Breathing is important.
But even for people who are not in a position necessarily to do all these things, and we could be talking to people who simply don't have the wherewithal, financial wherewithal, to do some of these things and are not in Australia, we can all save energy as well.
We can use less.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Turn things off at the at the PowerPoint. And just not wait. Dry your clothes in the sun. In the wind, rather than use a dryer. Yeah, I agree, Steve.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, transport.
This is very hard in the US, I think, even more than Australia. But you've recently got an electric bike, haven't you, Kate? Are you loving it?
I have an electric bike, and I have to say I absolutely love it. And it is the most fun thing in the world, having an electric bike. Because you can go uphill because I'm not as fit as I'd like to be, but I'm getting fitter.
You arrive at work exhausted and sweaty. You just arrive more calm and collected.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. And, like the internal combustion engine is a massive problem, right? Like it used to be hailed as this, great invention that, has caused, global advancement. But, every time we get in a petrol car, we're at the end of this cycle of fossil fuel extraction. Yeah. And, we've got to ditch the fossil fuels. We can't get away from it. Fossil fuels are causing global warming, and global warming is killing our planet.
Yeah. This is my worst one.
Well, it's both of us. We're hypocrites here. We both have petrol-driven cars still.
Yeah.
And we both sometimes fly. I don't fly as much as I used to fly.
Yeah.
But I am going to do a long haul flight this year. I'm going to go and visit my 85-year-old father in the UK. If you have to fly, you can maybe fly a bit less.
You can offset.
You can offset, which we do anyway. But to be honest, I don't have much confidence in the integrity.
It's probably better than not doing it.
But it's better than not doing it. Yeah. We can certainly fly less as well, which we try to do. I don't go to international conferences, which I did until very recently. You can sometimes do these things online. We still fly interstate for our weekends. The weekend courses.
I mean, obviously it's not everyone's different. My latest philosophical sort of where I've settled on with flying is I'll do it if there's an activist reason to do it.
Yeah.
But if not.
But some of these things, it does, again, you can change your own behavior. But if we want people, even electric cars have a carbon footprint. But in terms of the manufacture, but if we want people to move away from the car, this does involve politics. Because you have to offer a replacement first. There has to be good, reliable, inexpensive public transport.
Absolutely, and and corporate responsibility.
Yes.
They're going to have electric planes. They've got prototypes for. The aviation industry is working towards this. They're not there yet, but it's something that can happen. As far as electric cars go, we need electric infrastructure so that it's easy to charge your car, and we need to sell it. rather than saying it's, having an electric car is going to destroy your weekend. How about saying having an electric car is going to help save your planet, and it's quiet and it's got fast acceleration and you feel really good and they're fun, it's all about the sell.
Absolutely.
It's a big one that everyone can do. Everyone can do this. Switch your bank. Me too. Yeah.
So this is about divestment, really, is like it's who you bank with, who you have your super with, who you have your insurance with. And it's basically moving your money from banks and financial institutions that support the fossil fuel industry to ones that don't. And the Market Forces is a great website in Australia. I imagine that in the US there'd be similar websites out there, which basically compare them all. Yeah. You as
it's so much easier than it used to be.
Know more about me.
Switching your super in Australia to Future Super, Australian Ethical.
That's our retirement savings system in Australia, in case anybody's listening.
Yeah. It used to be sort of something that might take days and you have to make numerous phone calls. No, it takes literally minutes.
And then literally minutes. Yeah. Like,
if you haven't done it, do it.
Okay. Vote for it. Vote for your climate. Now, in Australia, we have an election coming up. And, it's fundamental, like we know it's vital to have a political response to the climate crisis. And, if the party you vote for is not putting climate front and center of their policy, they are failing you as a voter. We live in the most important decade of human history, which is like, a huge sentence to say. But we know the science is telling us we have to turn it around this decade if we're going to have a livable planet. And so that means we definitely need political action. And so I think, we should consider climate as our first thing when we vote. People vote about jobs, people vote about taxes, education and health. That's why I think climate and health go together pretty well, because, if you're not voting for climate action, you're basically voting for your own bad future. So vote climate.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think probably this is one area that pretty much everybody that's watching this show will be doing already to an extent, in that if they're in Australia, I don't think we can have many Liberal voters that watch us. And although I myself in the election will be supporting the Greens, I understand people may be putting their energy into Labour simply because they think only one or two can win the election. And
also,
the Labour Party's
preferential voting is a whole nother topic, really, Stephen, isn't it? You can have an episode on that.
Again, everybody, I have lots of friends in the Labour Party, and I don't want to fight with them if that's their view as far as this particular matter is concerned. It's not one I share, but it's not something. The last thing we want to do is the people who are on the progressive side where climate change is concerned fight against each other. But if we were in the UK, there are conservatives there. It's not unusual in the UK for conservatives to be on board with the need to address climate change. It's really the US and Australia more than pretty much anywhere else in rich countries where the conservative side of politics is basically still in denial. As far as climate change is concerned. It's not a left-right issue. After all, it's a physics.
It's insanity, isn't it?
It's insanity.
It's really crazy. All right, and so let's just go on to the last slide.
Yes, just shout out to the TNL party. If you're in New South Wales, you can cast your vote on the Senate paper for Steve Keen,
who we have interviewed, who is an expert in the economics of climate change and is even greener than the Greens.
Yes. Wow. And also looking at policy making through an MMT lens, which is what we're about on this show as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, okay. And then that's the last slide is basically to act for your climate. So this really asks everybody to think about what skill they have that they can bring to the table. You might be, say you're really good at gardening. Grow lots of trees and give them to your friends for Christmas. Maybe you're really good at money and you want to help your friends divest and you understand that world. For me, I'm a doctor. I understand climate from a health perspective. But I think, in this time, it behooves all of us to think, what is it that I can do? What can I bring to the table? How do I do it? And then step up, because now's the time for us all to work together to save our very beautiful but very fragile planet. And so there's a list of 1 to 10. I think we start with 1.
On the summary.
Yeah. So, that slide didn't work. That's what happens when we change formats. But basically, we can learn, talk, eat, water, plant power, transport, finance, vote, and act. So whichever one, if you're listening to this, whichever one kind of grabs your imagination. Start with 1 and then go from there. Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. That's a great place to finish the slideshow. I want to ask you, you talked just before about thinking about what is the thing that you're good at that you can do. And you've become a climate communicator. So I want to ask you about that quickly before we finish today. What have you learnt from becoming such a great communicator and hosting the different events and forums and things that you do every day? I just see what you're doing.
Thanks for the compliment.
Your schedule is amazing.
What I've learned is that you need to have a go. So you don't have to get an A+, you just have to have a go. And the more goes you have, the better you get at things.
Yeah.
And that the world is run by those that turn up. So turn up, because if you're not turning up, then someone else is going to run the world for you. And, we need to be brave and have courage. And so, 10 years ago, I was, doing a lot of yelling at my computer and, engaging in a whole heap of slacktivism. And over the last 10 years, I've kind of stood up, and the more I do, the better I get at it. That's basically it. We learn by doing. And, you don't have to get an A+, just have a crack.
And you can still shout at your computer if you want to.
I still do. Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like I'm quite lucky in that I can choose what I do in my day job, so to speak, in my kind of day-to-day activities. I can actually say, okay, what is the most useful thing that I can do, and then really focus on that. And not many people, I would say, have that luxury. A lot of people just have to go to work and earn a living and use what spare time they can. So I feel really privileged and lucky to be able to do that.
But as Kate was saying, everybody can do something. And being a soccer fan, as I am, I like to think that we can all play different positions. Not everybody has to be the centre forward. Yeah. Everybody can do something.
Exactly.
Whatever we can do, and not to be too harsh on yourself either, because as I was saying before, we are to an extent hypocrites.
Yeah.
But you do the best you can and try and do a bit better.
And when you do something, the last thing I want to say is acknowledge your achievement. So say if you do go out for a counter meal and you order the veggie burger instead of the steak, that night you get to go, okay, I did that thing. So if you do go and switch your bill, then you get to say, okay, I did that thing. And that's something that's done, and it hadn't been done before you did it. So, acknowledge it and then go, yeah, okay, good me. Maybe I'll do something else tomorrow. Yeah,
broach those hard topics in conversations, especially around voting time and election time. It's too late to enroll to vote if you're a young person now, but hopefully we've got hundreds of thousands of extra young people on the electoral roll who are concerned about climate and will vote for climate.
And the biggest election in human history is the next US presidential election. At the moment, it looks like the Republicans are going to be back, and there will be somebody like Ron DeSantis, who is on this issue every bit as bad as Donald Trump. So if we've got American viewers, you know that better than we do. So yes, get involved, because we can all make a difference by our individual issues. But if we genuinely want there to be major change, we at least need sympathetic people to be in. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the most important. Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a great show. Thank you very much, Kate.
Thanks, Kate, for sharing advice and your wisdom and your tips for getting out there and doing things. That is really hopeful. We had Mark Diesendorf on our show last week, and he had a lot of reasons for being hopeful about the energy transition too. So if you missed that show, you can catch it on the YouTube channel. It's really well worth watching. And and we've got a guest coming up next week.
Next week we'll have a German economist. I nearly said a young German economist. He's in his early 40s. That seems young to me these days. Not so young. He was young when I first met him. German economist called Dr. Dirk Entz, who is at the leading, I think, European modern monetary theory economist, and is also very well versed in ecological issues, and is going to be working with us on our postgraduate courses in ecological economics and modern monetary theory that we are setting up this year with Torrens University. It will be great to talk to Dirk.
Yes.
And the only remaining
He's an excellent teacher too, isn't he?
Dirk is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. He's one of the all-round best human beings that I've ever met. So it will be a pleasure to talk to Dirk next week, as it's been a pleasure to talk to Kate this week. And it only remains for us to say that after us is coming up Joe Firestone's show as normal. So please watch that too.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on. Okay. Bye-bye, Stephen. Bye-bye, Gabby.